my notes.
What's going on? This is Torch contributor Frank Peteani back with the latest edition of Pro Wrestling Then and Now here on the PWTorch YouTube page. And today we are continuing our journey looking back at 1995 WWF and looking at the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Yes, my co-host and I are brave souls to look back on that show. But hey, you know what? There's talking points. There's things to discuss, and we're going to do it. So without further ado, let me introduce said co-host. He has been riding with me on this 1995 journey, having a lot of fun doing it. And today will be no exception. Your friend and mine, longtime Torch contributor, John Mezzera. John, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing well, Frank. Thanks for having me. I mean, I thought we were friends, but then you made me start going through 1995 WWF, so now I'm not so sure. But yes.
Who else could I torture with this? Who else could I do this
to? I know. I'm in a nostalgic mood. I got my Mario Brothers vintage. It's 85 instead of 95, but close enough, right? So I'm always in a nostalgic mood when it comes to then and now. So it's going to be fun.
There you go. I'm going to have to show my son this video because he is a big Mario. Well, he's a Mario Kart fan. So, you know, we haven't quite played classic Mario, but I do have it. So I might have to work on that. So quick, couple of housekeeping items. Of course, John, you and I covered In Your House 1. So we're basically just going down the line in 1995 and covering the happenings in between. We're not going over every Raw because there's no point in doing that. We could just cover the basics. But as far as what's coming up, In Your House 2 will be next. I'd love to be able to continue with ECW and other things like that. My schedule has just been really difficult the last month, and July is going to be no exception between work and personal things. So I'm going to stick with the WWF for now. If I can wedge time in to do some of those other things, I'll do it. I also wanted to do Saturday night's main event. I mean, you know, I want to do a lot of things for the show, but it's just time, unfortunately, is not on my side. But as things change, you know, I'll give notice via social media and stuff like that. At the end, John, we'll replug. I mean, you've been with me this whole year, but we'll replug our socials and what you do for the Torch on the way out. We are live, of course, on the PWTorch YouTube page, and this will be available for download afterwards on the Torch VIP side. So if you are not a VIP member, I encourage you, and up here on the screen for those watching, it's pwtorch.com/govip. Again, pwtorch.com/govip. You can sign up with a credit card, debit card, PayPal, Patreon, Spotify, or your Apple account. So get in on that. A lot of benefits to being a Torch VIP member. The post-pay-per-view roundtables, the fix, everything, Collision Cafe, Alan Forel's Pro Wrest Paradise, just so many shows. I may be missing one or two, and I apologize to those that run those shows. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of benefits to that membership. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We got 5, so we're not lonely. One of these days, I'll figure out how to pull up the names. And Zach, my good buddy, I thought you only had daughters. No, I have a son. I have a soon-to-be 9-year-old son. He will be 9 this Sunday, actually. So, yes, we are a party of 5, and I'm not talking about the show from the late 90s. So, all right, let's just hit a couple of happenings that took place in between In Your House 1 and King of the Ring. And I see the chat room has got a lot more people, so I'm really happy to see that.
Cool.
Put your comments up there. We'll put them up. We want to hear from you. And if there's anything that we're missing, feel free. I mean, listen, we're not perfect. We might not know a few things. Only Kurt Hennig was perfect. So, put your stuff out there. Let us know. One correction I do want to make. We talked about Owen Hart versus the British Bulldog as a qualifier in a dark match on the last pay-per-view, and it was taped for the June 5th episode of Raw. So it was actually talked about and advertised in episodes of Raw following that pay-per-view. So if you were at the show and you saw it, you're probably really confused if you were watching the TV. So, Wade had speculated that the winner of that match would face Bob Holly, and that would likely be Owen. And the winner is Bob Holly had qualified, beating Mantar. And the winner would face the winner of Razor versus Rhodey, which is what Wade originally had. So figuring Razor would beat Rhodey, that would set up Razor versus Owen, which would have been really interesting. He does correct himself in a later edition of the Torch, where Razor would face Yokozuna, and we know what that turns into. And the Rhodey would face Bob Holly, which is what we actually got on this pay-per-view. Also, Razor had not been injured yet, so we'll get into that. Undertaker versus Mabel and Shawn Michaels versus Kama was set. Undertaker had beaten Jeff Jarrett. Shawn Michaels had beaten King Kong Bundy. I'll get into the scenarios. There's some interesting scenarios that Wade lays out. One thing that we do find out once the draw between Owen and Bulldog was aired, Jack Tunney had announced that Lex Luger would face Yokozuna in a qualifier for King of the Ring. And that, of course, is won by Yokozuna. And, we didn't talk about this off air, but that's the third televised match between these three, and another one that ends in a non-pin, in a non-submission. And it's like, it's nuts that this is a feud that main evented SummerSlam, I guess kind of main evented WrestleMania 10 as one of the title matches, and is a qualifier for King of the Ring, and we never get a pin or submission finish. And I mean, is it one of those feuds that needed it, or because it was Lex Luger and it's mid-1995, it just doesn't matter at this point?
I mean, at this point, who cares?
Yeah.
Because,
It's sad, right?
It had kind of run its course, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but what are they protecting Luger? If you want Yoko to go over, they're doing the Allied Powers tag team at this point. I guess if you want to protect Luger for a title match, a tag title match, then makes sense. Then don't book the match. But then at the same time, then you'll have people questioning, well, why isn't Luger, in it? So from that standpoint, I can understand doing what they did. At the same time, we don't need to relitigate SummerSlam and the balloons, WrestleMania with Perfect coming back and the guest referee cheesy cop out there.
Yeah.
They could have done Luger Hart WrestleMania 10 main event, face versus face. Why not? I mean, unless again, well, then who's going to win? Obviously, Bret's going to win, and so then you have to have Bret beat Luger, and they don't want anybody to beat Luger, I guess. So it's all that wishy-washy cop-out stuff then and now. We're still talking
pun
about
totally intended, because we get a lot of that today.
30 years later. So it just, I guess at that point, like I said, did it really matter? Probably not in the long run, but we've talked a lot on the show going back to last year's King of the Ring when I was a guest host. That Luger wasn't even, booked on that pay-per-view. He's not booked on this one. All the wasted opportunities. We've again, we don't need to go over everything. People can check the back issues, but we've talked about could they have turned him heel? Could, the different scenarios for using him better than they did. And we know coming up in a few months, he's gone. So it won't really matter to them at that point, but
Yeah.
they certainly could have done more with him. And at this point, Yoko's in the tag team with Owen, and we know what his major limitations were at this point. Giving Savio Vega, or maybe the original plan, Razor Ramon, a win over Yoko in the opening round. He's still tag team champion. He's still a former world champion. So
Yeah.
I think, he still had a lot of name value at this point. So I can certainly understand them wanting Yoko in the tournament to put over someone in the first round.
Yeah, for sure. Zach here, Flexi Lexi was just twisting in the wind at this point. Not the first friend of mine that called him Flexi Lexi. And Zahn, the grass is not always greener on the other side. That goes for both sides. I guess he's talking about Luger going over to WCW. Yeah, we'll write the epitaph on Luger's career after SummerSlam, because that's pretty much when it comes to an end. So we'll save our words for that.
Yeah. I will say real quick while I'm thinking of it, I liked on this show how they showed the highlights of the qualifying matches.
Yeah.
It's just a little touch, but a nice production touch to catch everybody up on how everyone got all the wrestlers, qualified. So that was a good little touch.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about WWF, / WWE today. If you don't watch the television, and you just watch the pay-per-views or the PLEs as they are today, you can be caught up. They know, maybe more so now, they know they have different fans that, look, not everybody's going to watch everything. Okay. So, here you go. We'll catch you up on what you missed. So that's, that's a good thing on their part.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll come back. There's some scenarios that Wade ran. We'll run those later. Real quick, a couple of rapid fire topics that took place between the last pay-per-view and this. Chris Benoit. And I know it's tough to talk about Chris Benoit, so I'm doing the Men in Black. Please erase 2007 on, and let's just think about Chris Benoit prior to 2007. He worked a couple of dark matches and was talking to the WWF about possibly working for them. He had lost to Bob Holly, and he worked matches against Adam Bomb and Owen Hart. And Wade talked about this in one of his Below the Bottom lines, talked about Benoit following in the footsteps of his idol, the Dynamite Kid, and was curious about WWF's interest in him because at this point he was a work rate guy. I mean, that's what he was. If you weren't a tape trader, if you weren't following the other promotions, Japan, ECW, things like that, you probably weren't familiar with him. So, he was curious about it, but interested, because especially with Shawn Michaels turning babyface, you want to get guys that can, you can only do so much with Kama and Mabel and Bundy and Sid and guys like that. So you need some guy, and Benoit would be one of those guys. Obviously that happens a lot later on. So my question to you is, do we think that Benoit, again, let's erase 2007 on, would Benoit have been set up for success had he come to the WWF instead of going to WCW as it turned out? I want to hear yours first. Go ahead.
Yeah, my gut is to say no. He was just too undersized for Vince at that time. When he does eventually come as the part of the Radicals, he had made a much bigger name for himself in WCW, and he basically, was walking out as the champion. They were trying to keep him. They were desperate, WCW. So it was almost like an FU to WCW to bring those guys in.
Sure.
More than even wanting them specifically, in my opinion. So, and I think he would have taken Rey Mysterio at the same time if he could have. Because I know Rey was threatening to walk at the same time, if memory serves. But Ray ended up re-signing because they gave him a good deal. So I don't see it because of that. That doesn't mean it wouldn't have been good. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean, to your point, you can see some of those matches, Bret, Shawn, even 1, 2, 3 Kid, some of those good workers that they had versus Benoit at the time. And then if Benoit goes babyface, you got Owen, you've got some others
Mhm.
you could work with. So,
Funny you mention
he's
Owen,
talent. Yeah.
because what he speculates on is Yokozuna. Now, this is a couple of weeks before King of the Ring. Yokozuna could actually win King of the Ring 1 year after his partner had won it. And that could start a rift between him and Owen. If they bring Benoit in, you team Benoit and Owen for a little while.
Well, that certainly would have been a good team.
Yeah.
And as we've talked about, Vince clearly saw Owen as more of a tag team guy over the years, with very brief singles runs in between several high
Right.
quality, big star, big name
Right.
in the end, tag team partners. So, yeah, I think that certainly could have worked. He's probably more likely to push a guy like that in a tag team than as a singles
Yeah.
act. So yeah, I could see that. So, and obviously the Canadian connection and
Mhm.
everything else. It certainly would have been interesting and could have worked. Probably definitely more that scenario than as a single star, I think, at that point.
Yeah, we're in alignment because I think going to WCW set him up for success later on in the WWF. Whereas, at this point, I mean, outside of Shawn Michaels, the work rate guys really weren't doing much. I mean, Bret's kissing Lawler's feet, or having Lawler kiss his feet, and then he's working with dentists. Okay.
Right.
Kid, I mean, he was hurt at the time, but he eventually turns heel. Hakushi, who was one of their great work rate guys. He's a secondary guy in the Bret Lawler feud, and he's losing every match.
Right.
So, I mean, outside of Shawn, and if you consider Jeff Jarrett a work rate guy, the work rate guys really weren't, getting much higher than the mid card. I mean, it's still a world of Diesels, and it's still a world of Mabels, and Sids and Yokozunas and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think his going to WCW set him up later on, when they were trying to compete,
Right.
and when the Empire, whatever you want to call WCW, started to crumble. Yeah, the Radicals coming to the WWF, to me, was one of the biggest shots across the bow. I mean, you could talk about Big Show coming over. You could talk about X-Pac. I mean, those were kind of the starts of it. But, I mean, they were done with those guys at that point. That was a completely different story. Talking about Benoit, Eddie, Dean, and Perry Saturn, coming in 2000.
Yeah, and it was almost like, I mean, you can't say it because they lasted another whatever year, but it was close to the nail in the coffin to
Oh, yeah.
WCW at that point.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, that's it.
Yeah.
Put a fork in it. They're done.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
All right. Real quick, couple of rapid fire things that were also taking place. Dustin Rhodes was negotiating with the WWF. My buddy, if you're still in the chat here, Zach Barber. We talk about Uncensored. He was the sacrificial lamb for that show, and he got fired after that show. After the King of the Road match with Barry Darso. So he was negotiating with the WWF, and I was surprised to find out that he was willing to change his name. Now, he says take it out for the legacy of his father, but I think it's a little more than that. I think he knew if he just came in as Dustin Rhodes, he's not going to do much. I mean, he had been there before. He had been there in the 90s, and he was just basically, Dusty's son. I think he knew that he had to adopt some kind of gimmick. Otherwise, I mean, what do we know Dustin for? Let's be honest. As much as I love Dustin,
that was the height of his career.
Forget the name.
Yeah, that was the height of his career, and that's not like a dig. Goldust was huge at one time, and it just, um, helped, I think, in an underappreciated way, push the boundaries towards what would become known as the Attitude Era. And
You could say Goldust was really one of the first characters that, yeah, you
that
could say
started
that.
it because you had these goofy kind of characters, but his was not for kids.
Right,
And
right.
when they started to really counter in out of necessity, WCW aiming for teens and young adults, and WWF had always aimed for kids. And then it was like, what are we going to do? Well, you had that Goldust character already, pushing those boundaries,
Yeah,
and you you weren't going to forget it. And Dustin, as good as he was, as Dustin,
right.
US champion, early 90s, mid 90s WCW, it wasn't like something that stood out in the crowd.
Mhm.
He was good. He had, he's tall, but not super tall.
Right.
So he's not like a big guy that's going to stand out, in a way. He's not one of those high flying guys. He's just a good all around worker, good all around presence. But Goldust just skyrocketed, took him to the next level, and he was never going to be, world champion. But
Right.
not everybody has to be to make a big impact.
Zach asking here in the chat for those just listening, part of me wonders what would have happened if he came in as the natural. And I think you just covered that. I mean, in WCW or WCW, and I'm saying that way on purpose, it works because that's what those fans go for. Them good wrestlers, and Dusty's son, and that's what works down there. And personally, I prefer the natural, and I get that. I respect that. But I think the notoriety would not have come without him being Goldust. And I think that's I think that even set him up for even today he's a legend now, as the natural, and
Yeah.
and he's in a company where it works, obviously, with with AEW. They appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I just don't see I don't see how it works
But he's still,
in
even in WCW as Dustin, he's still doing the face paint and a lot of those
yeah,
things that grew out of Goldust. I guess the other question, whether we want to explore it or not, is if he had stayed in WCW, because he had been there for a decent amount of time. When you get a year later to NWO,
yeah.
how would he have worked as one of those WCW, originals facing, the NWO, or would he have just been totally steamrolled by the outsiders and been kind of forgotten in the shuffle with a lot of those other guys? Or does he end up joining the NWO because, at some point they've run out of everybody else, so might as well have Dustin join too.
I think honestly, once Hogan got there, I think they were cleaning out all, with the exception of your Ric Flairs and your Stings and everything like that. They were cleaning out all the good old boys. I
Right.
think they were cleaning all that out. I mean, like, he got fired for that match with Barry Darso, and I understand they bled. They weren't supposed to bleed, but I think that was an excuse.
Hmm.
I think they were looking for a reason to get rid of them, and they just didn't. They just didn't see it. They just didn't see it in them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so who knows? Last but not least, speaking of WCW, in edition 339, Wade had announced that WCW would be competing with the WWF on Monday nights. Now, it was originally speculated that it would happen in August, but it turns out to be September, and that would end up being Monday Nitro. So it's just kind of interesting to see it going back. And it's just funny reading Wade's article, talking about, what's WCW going to do, producing 6 hours of television in a week. And I'm reading this and I'm like, 1995, meet 2025. You guys want to get to know each other. WWE's putting out what, 7+, right?
7.5 on an average non-PLE week. Yeah. But it could be worse.
Yeah. And AEW with four a week, 4 hours, and 8 hours of a pay-per-view once a month. I'm sorry, like 4 hours, Okay.
I mean, I think it's somewhere in between. Depends on whether you count the 2-hour pre-show or not. And of course, WWE is just pre-shows too, but they don't have matches, so who cares?
It's such a waste. Yeah, I know. I mean, I'd rather watch. I not that I want to watch pre-shows, but it's WWE pre-show is a waste of time. Zach, they were cleaning out babyface threats to Hogan. I mean, was Dustin a threat to Hogan? Yeah, I think I mean, that's why I think they got rid of Austin.
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to know because
it is hard to know. I mean, but think about it. The Austin's gone. Simmons is gone. Mm-hmm. Dustin. I mean, it's basically all the guys that made up the core of WCW prior to Hogan getting there.
But they're bringing Luger back. I mean, they're bringing Luger back. They got Sting. I don't know. But
that's Sting influencing Bischoff, though. That's Sting bringing his buddy back.
And the problem is that
Bischoff didn't want Luger.
You're never going to get a straight, honest answer from Bischoff on any of this stuff. So it's like, who's going to be? How do we really ever get to the truth of the matter? And he said versus Bischoff said 3 different things probably. So
yeah,
there's
budgets. I mean, it sometimes it just gets to a point where let's figure out a way to get rid of this guy and get rid of that one. They did bring in Hogan's has-beens. I agree with that. With Duggan and Ed Leslie, yeah, guys like that. I mean, Duggan had a few good matches, but that's why I'm not covering WCW 1995 right now. So,
we're covering WWF instead.
yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I just remembered it. In a below the bottom line, Wade talked about what roster would you take. 1995 WWF at this point. So, we're talking about, right now, June of 95 or WCW of 95. What do you think he said?
Oh, WWF.
Yep.
But
he would want Hogan and Savage to kind of, charge the car a little bit.
Bridge the gap a little bit.
Right. He'd want those guys, but you've got Diesel, you've got Scott Hall, you've got Bret, you've got all these guys.
Sean.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of guys. They're not. I mean, let's be honest. It's a component roster at this point. It's a component roster. It's not. Diesel's not a star, even if he is the champion. Sean's not there yet. As much as I love Bret, Bret's not the guy you're building around.
Right? But Bret's getting consistently your best.
And he's over.
Reaction. So, yeah.
He's getting the loudest cheers, but that's another story.
For sure.
But you're still not building. I mean, Bret was only the champion in 94 because Luger didn't get over. Otherwise, Luger would have been champ. Sure. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, over at WCW, you got Hogan, you got Savage. I mean, you're not getting the best out of them. Flair is on the back nine.
But he's still
performing, but it's not.
He's still value. He has value for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of obviously pre-NWO people. It's it's pre those ECW guys who come in, and I know they're undercard, but again, another underrated aspect, of that NWO era was like the cruiserweights and that athleticism that WWF didn't have and WCW top of the card, even the good workers, didn't have that kind of style. And suddenly you've got your Eddies and your Benoits and your Rays, all of those guys, but they're not there yet, I don't think, at this point. So
Now they start trickling in over the next year.
right. So when you look at the card, I mean, I'd have to, you know better than me, having done some of these earlier pay-per-views, as look backs, but trying to think of who, Buff Bagwell, I know was there. I mean, who the Steiner brothers, I assume, were there at that point.
I think they check back in around now or maybe a year later. I don't remember.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Patriot, is he there at this point? Mark Marrow, Johnny B. Bad, is he there at that?
We're about a year away from Marrow checking. Oh, wait a minute. No, I think. Yeah,
I think of 96.
We're not too far away from Marrow checking out and coming to WWF.
Right, but I mean, if he's one of your guys, I can see why Vince is not, or why Wade is not.
Yeah.
But
still, I mean, there's more, because at this point, Malenko and Guerrero are not there. Zach, Mark left W. That's what I thought, because you know what? Now it makes sense, because Triple H came out with Sable at WrestleMania, and then she was actually married to Marrow at the time, and then she ended up being with Marrow afterwards, and that started the Marrow Triple H feud.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah,
that makes sense.
And
I thought of somebody else. Who did I just think of? Oh, Cactus Jack is gone at this point, right?
He's gone. He's ECW.
Austin is gone.
Yep.
So a lot of those guys who had been pretty established in the early 90s WCW are gone. And the people like we just mentioned who were coming in 96 and after aren't there yet.
Yeah.
So they're in a transitional period, just like WWF, because I noticed at some point, I don't know when I don't remember them using this phrase, was the next generation or the new generation.
The new generation was already, that started in 94.
Okay. Because I was going to say, they definitely were using it at this point. I'm like, did they use it for...
because I think when we did King of the Ring, they were advertising the new generation.
Okay.
When they main evented with Roddy Piper and Jerry Lawler.
Oh, that's right. I do remember talking about that. You're right. But I mean, it is a transition.
Out with the old and in with the old.
Right. But away from Hogan and Savage and Piper now.
Yeah.
But with Diesel as the leader of the next generation. So
yes, WWF was running on diesel power.
That's right.
Yes. In case of emergency, Zach says Bret. In case of emergency, Bret Glass. Okay, I see what he did there. Okay, for those just listening on audio. And New Generation started at King of the Ring 94. So yeah. He backing us up. All right, let's get to this. Let's get to this fine pay-per-view. We're going to talk more about the booking of things rather than the blow-to-blow. There's not a lot to talk about match-wise on this show, so just to let everybody know what we're doing. Real quick, the show, this is actually the 30-year anniversary of this show. So June 25th of 1995 took place in the Core State Spectrum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was the home of the NBA's Philadelphia 76ers and the very hated NHL Philadelphia Flyers, especially if you're a Rangers and a Devils and an Islanders fan. The building is no longer up. It was demolished by May of 2011. It was the host of SummerSlam 1990 and many episodes of WCW Monday Nitro and Thunder. According to Wikipedia, less than 17,000 in attendance. Your announcers for the evening, as was it in your house, one, Vince McMahon, and the man formerly known as Michael P.S. Hayes, Mr. Doc Hendricks.
And I have my one note on that was Doc is a less annoying this month than last.
Yeah, so he wasn't. It's funny.
He was overly heelish.
Right.
So this time he was just kind of like more down the line. than super heelish as he had been. So I thought he did a better job fitting in. Although, like, it's like a disease when you call matches with Vince McMahon. You're suddenly every other word is maneuver.
Maneuver, what a move, what a maneuver, what a move. I do have one note on that where Vince surprised me, and that's in one of the quarterfinal matches.
All right.
So this was on, I guess, the Coliseum home video. They showed you because we all didn't realize that we needed to see Savio Vega versus IRS, but hey, we got it. I was actually hoping that we didn't have to see that, but we did. Savio Vega with Razor Ramon in his corner, who had been injured in a ladder match against Jeff Jarrett, which is why he was not in the tournament. He defeated IRS in a King of the Ring qualifier. Didn't go very long. Savio won it with a spinning heel kick. I took 0 notes on this match, John.
I just said at one point IRS had the Triple H top rope spot where he's not going for an actual move. He just kind of jumps off the top rope and gets kicked in the face, which is a Triple H special for a long time. And I said it had an abrupt ending. It was just kind of like he did I guess I'd forgotten that spinning heel kick was Savio's finishing move, because it was just kind of seemed like he kicked him and it was over. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
So,
I think
not a lot to it.
Yeah, I think the idea is just because he was working another match. I'm not sure what the time difference was between that and the opener, so they probably just want to get him get him in and out of there. So and the less we see IRS, the better. So yeah. We go to the opening match on the pay-per-view proper. It is the King of the Ring quarterfinal. It is Savio Vega taking on Yokozuna. He had cut a promo with Razor Ramon prior. And as far as, let's see here, we talked about all of that. Yes. Okay. Yes, Yokozuna had beaten Lex Luger via countout. I mentioned that before. Yoko is still the current tag team champion at this point, and his partner Owen Hart is watching on a video monitor. Apparently, he had suffered a concussion, so that's why he was not on the pay-per-view. I forget which one of the newsletters Wade reported that, so that's why he was not in the arena. A little less than 8.5 minutes on this. Vega wins it via countout. So actually, I stand corrected. Owen Hart does come out. He does come out, and he gets into it with Razor Ramon, but doesn't do much. So that supports what was going on. Both Vega and Yokozuna make their way out of the ring, and Vega ends up throwing Yokozuna into the ring post. Vega beats the count back in, and that Vega's your winner. And he advances. He will face the winner of the Bob Holly versus Rhodey match. So I had this, John, as a nondescript match, but it was fine, I guess. They worked with Yokozuna because he really wasn't going to do much,
Right.
So they worked it that way. But, man, he was gassed like a minute into the match. I don't know if you noticed that, but he was just like huffing and puffing. So...
Yeah.
Savio got some stuff early, but they worked it where he could kind of carry the match, and then Savio can make the comeback and get out of there.
Yeah, my note was just outside interference and a count out. It's you get both of them in this match. I'm assuming if Razor is healthy, that the plan would have been for him to be in this match and to go over in a similar fashion. But yeah, there's not much to say. We know that he doesn't have Owen to tag out to.
Yeah.
To get those rest moments in between his action. So I actually think, all things considered, it really could have been worse. It could have been worse. It was fine.
Yeah, for sure. Is on here. Savio Vega could have been IC champ, just missing a key part. Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. I mean, he had a little bit of a personality. He had a little bit of spunk to him, but at that point, I mean, Shawn Michaels, Jeff Jarrett, Razor
Well,
Ramon.
well, eventually, Austin is so high on working with Vega early in his run in WWF.
Yeah,
That was a really important early feud, and
yeah,
he had something. And we'll get to the end when we get to the end, but we'll we'll see what would a King Savio been a better option at that point.
yeah. Zach, couldn't Yoko take a pin at this point? You're not going to pin Yogo. Listen to me. You're not going to pin Yokozuna with Savio Vega at this point. You're still kind of trying to protect Yokozuna, so I could see it.
With the tag title, especially, I think.
Yeah, with the tag titles, that's an excellent point. How many actual jobs, Azan, did Yoko do on pay-per-views? The ones that jump out to me, I mean, he loses to Hogan in that WrestleMania 9, surprise match. He lost to Bret the year after. I'd have to look. I don't remember 96 much.
He loses to Austin at some point, but it was like on a pre-show at was it SummerSlam or something?
Yeah.
A pre-show. That was right at the end.
Yeah, that was after King of the Ring.
Right.
And I don't remember in this 6-man who took the pin at WrestleMania 12. I'd have to look that up. But yeah, I mean, they protect. I mean, he was a protected act, and I could see why they'd want to do it.
And it's not so much. I think what you said was the accurate thing. Not so much protecting him, but were they going to give that pin to Savio? You know what I mean?
Right.
There were if you're going to pin Yoko on a pay-per-view, yeah, you could make an argument that puts over Savio real big. But if he had just debuted the month before, if they weren't ready to get really behind him, then you're going to save those spots.
Yeah.
And if you want, at some point when Yoko and Owen lose the tag titles, now I'm not saying this is what happened, but I'm just saying that you could be thinking ahead. If somebody pins Yoko instead of Owen, that could really put over a new tag team as the new champion. So I think it makes sense to do it this way.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Let's ask the question. If Razor had this match, is Razor pinning Yokozuna? I don't even know if Razor's getting that pin.
Yeah, and I suspect not.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah. And Zach saying, I think it was Jake. He was answering my WrestleMania 12 question. All right. We move on to Jerry Lawler cutting a promo showing his dirty feet and spraying some kind of Lysol or something. I don't know about you, but they were talking about this so much on television in the run-up. I couldn't stand it after a while. And I remember it on like Raw and Superstars, how he was like not washing his feet. He was showing all like the calluses and the dirt and everything. And I'm just like, my God, this is what you're doing. This is what you're giving to Bret Hart. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I remember that too. I didn't actually get this show. This is the first time I saw this.
Oh, wow.
This show. Yeah, I wasn't sure going into it, but when I watched it, I was like, certain things seemed familiar enough because I know I saw like replays, but
yeah,
I'm sure I didn't watch this at the time. But I definitely remember what you're talking about on the Raws and Superstars leading up to it. And I mentioned positively Doc Hendricks, and this is how he's being produced, but it was like, we got the King of the Ring tournament, and don't forget, somebody's going to have to kiss their feet. And we got, big main event, and somebody's going to have to kiss somebody's foot. And we're going to start the tournament now. And don't forget later, somebody's going to kiss. It was
yeah.
They were really, really pushing this gimmick.
Yeah.
Really. Even like during the actual show, it was non-stop.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then Stephanie whined later on, she stops to talk to Jerry and she can't take the stench. And it's like, come on. That had Vince written all over it.
For sure.
Written, oh, it stinks.
Yeah.
All right. Let's let's motor through the next match here. It's Bob Holly against the Roadie. So I had mentioned that Bob Holly beat Mantar, and the Roadie had defeated Doink the Clown with help from Jeff Jarrett. And I asked, well, how invested are they in the Roadie when you need interference to beat Doink the Clown? Come on now. Roadie was getting a push, though, since being involved in the feud with Razor Ramon and Jeff Jarrett. So kind of getting that secondary push we've seen a number of times in Vince McMahon booking over the years, Shawn Michaels and Diesel being the prime example. This goes a little over 7 minutes. The Roadie wins it, so this is kind of a screwed up finish. Holly goes for pedal to the metal, and this is my note about Vince that I mentioned earlier. Number one, I didn't remember Holly having a finisher with that name. Number two, Vince actually calling a wrestling move. Like, what's this world coming to?
Well, it was a pun.
Yeah,
he liked puns.
He goes for it off the top, and Roadie puts his foot up. Roadie comes over and does this nondescript pin. Referee is kind of out of position. He counts to 3, but before he hits 3, Holly gets his shoulder up, and the referee calls for the match anyway. So I couldn't tell if Holly just brain farted or maybe the referee didn't know the finish.
Yeah, it was weird. I put, what happened? ?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I mean, unless I missed something, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They didn't call attention to it at all, which says to me it was obviously not like a storyline kind of thing that they. So yeah, I don't know whose fault it was. It was definitely a botch. Not good at all. The match itself before that was fine.
Yeah.
Solid match. One thing I did note, and this kind of surprised me, is Roadie's referring to himself as Road Dog already.
Yes, I did note that later on in the show.
That surprised me, and Vince doesn't. Vince always calls him Roadie.
Yeah.
But he called himself Road Dog, and I think Doc calls him both. But I think he called him Road Dog maybe a little more than Roadie. But Vince was all Roadie, and I think the ring announcers and stuff were Roadie, but he was already Road Dog, which I would not have thought that nickname came quite so early.
Yeah. Wade had the match at 2.5 stars. Quote, Holly is a solid worker, and Roadie is showing that he has a tremendous upside in terms of work rate and ring presence. His gyrating during the match showed more interesting charisma, I got a kick out of this, than his brothers have in all their matches combined.
I mean, it's 100% the story of those.
And assuming no knowledge, he is of the Armstrong family. Brad Armstrong, Scott Armstrong. His father was Bullet Bob. And I can't remember if there were other brothers off the top of my head. But, yeah, listen, Brian was his real name. He was showing something. And again, getting that secondary push off of Jarrett. That was always a trademark of Vince, and it kind of worked here. I mean, we have the benefit of hindsight knowing that, speaking of Attitude Era guys, here's another guy. Goldust comes, here's another guy that becomes a key part of the Attitude Era.
For sure. And showing that charisma that, would lead to him becoming, huge.
Yeah.
And we can, question other things about him, but you can't question his charisma and his presence and his entertain. I mean, he was entertaining when he was at his best,
Yeah. Steve Armstrong, Zach points out, I'm not familiar with Steve. We only got 2 people in the chat. I would like the 2 people that are here. I mean, we could spread the word if others come on. Names that were around now that were the Attitude Era before the Attitude Era became the Attitude Era. I'll put that as an exercise out to the bunch, and feel free to put your comments, because you talked about it before with Goldust. I'd say even Razor Ramon laid the foundation for that, by being the bad guy but getting cheered. Diesel when he turns later in the year. I mean, that's kind of like, that's putting the building blocks down for what would become, the Attitude Era.
Sure.
So, All right. We talked about this match. Todd Pettengill talks to Shawn Michaels, and he talks about beating King Kong Bundy with a super kick. He said, the point of his promo, he says, being big doesn't necessarily make you good. And I'm like, boy, that's a shot at your buddy Diesel, isn't it?
I was going to say it's a shot at Vince McMahon.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. Shawn looked pissed on this show. I don't think he liked that he had to go to a draw with Kama.
That wouldn't surprise me. He
I don't
wasn't
think he liked
exactly known for his ability to hide his true feelings, so
Yeah.
that would not surprise me.
He didn't lose his smile in 97. I think he started losing it here in June of 95. So that's the cat out of the bag here. The next match, Shawn Michaels against Kama. So Shawn had beat King Kong Bundy, as we talked about. Kama defeated the great Duke the Dumpster Droese with a spine buster, I might add. A very impressive spine buster. So Kama was in the midst of a feud with The Undertaker. His creatures of the night were appearing at the ring. And like in some matches on Raw, they were on one side of the ring. They were on the other later on. So there was this weird thing going on.
I was trying to figure that out, and I just was going to ask you, what was up with the weirdo in the audience?
Yeah, they were just...
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they were just doing that because they were... I think that was supposed to get in Kama's head. And they were showing like the black flowers... because he had stolen the urn. He had stolen the urn and whatnot. Shawn spitting facts. We know Zach likes his work rate. That was Azan saying. I think he's saying that was Doug Basham.
That was Doug Basham?
I wouldn't have even known that. That's a hell of a call, Azan. That is a hell of a call. One of the creatures of the night. So, so this goes to a time limit draw. By the way, was it me or was some of Shawn's entrance cut off by the Peacock edit?
Yeah, I mean, it was, he was already halfway down the ringside. You didn't hear the I Love Shawn part of his music. So I didn't know if that was Peacock edit or if there was, I don't know.
There was a Peacock edit because I saw this show live 30 years ago. Okay. Yeah. 30 years ago at this time, I was sitting down with my friend John and we were watching this pay-per-view. And we had come back from Atlantic City. I remember the day distinctly. And I got lost too. I got lost coming back, but that's another story. We won't get into that. I think I won some money that day too. Anyway, I don't remember anything distinct or like something that would have to be, unless there was something on screen that had to get cut out, maybe something that was advertised. I don't know, but maybe Shawn's ass was showing. How Shawn liked to show his ass. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, but usually in the middle of a match. So
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw Sherry's ass at SummerSlam '92, so
Sure.
All right. So the finish of this match, as I mentioned, it's a time limit draw. Shawn has Kama pinned with a sunset flip with less than 2 seconds to go. The referee can only count to 2 before the bell rings. And I found that strange because counts in 1995, I'm not crazy, John. Counts were really fast. They
were fast.
Yeah. They were very fast this year.
Yep.
So
they were. And, this was a kind of a staple of McMahon tournaments, as I recall. A double count out or a double DQ, or in this case, a time limit draw. There were often these situations to give somebody a bye, a heel a bye to the finals. We saw it WrestleMania 4.
Yep.
We see it here. I'm sure there were other instances. And you know what? It was a pretty good match. I mean, it's Shawn Michaels, and Kama could carry, his own. He would, put on a lot of weight and lose some maneuverability, a lot of gut weight, when he was the Godfather. But he was still in, pretty good shape here. The gimmick was better than Papa Shango.
Do you know that Papa Shango was rumored to come back in 97?
Nah, I don't remember that, but
that was a rumor. Supposedly he was coming back, and instead they brought him in as the Godfather.
Well, that was a smart move.
I
But
think he was supposed to get involved, if I remember correctly. I think he was going to be involved in the whole Undertaker Kane bit.
that makes sense if you're going to do it. Sure. But it's best that they didn't. But but the match
Who
was,
would throw up this time? The Undertaker? Would he throw up?
when was puke? When did puke
Come on,
make
guys,
his
we got to have
debut?
laughs doing this. We got to, if we don't have laughs, if we don't have a good time, what's the point, right?
Oh Lord, yeah. Well, he could have thrown up at Jerry Lawler's feet. He could have thrown up with a curse from Papa
He's gonna
Shango.
puke.
He's gonna. Oh Lord, I mean, come on. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just. I read. I like to kind of out of curiosity see what some of the reactions were to the shows and stuff. And so one of the ones I read, it's like we could have had, 2 or 3 Shawn Michaels matches. Instead,
Right.
we get, multiple Road Dog matches, multiple, Mabel matches, and you only get one Shawn Michaels match.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, again, are you protecting Kama because you're doing the feud with Undertaker? Or is it just a matter of we want Michaels on the show? He's not going to win it, so we're going to protect him.
I have the
Um,
answer to that.
okay.
I'll tell you what I think it is. So the winner of this match, no one wins, but is slated to face the winner of Undertaker versus Mabel.
Right.
Well, we know Mabel wins this tournament. We're not spoiling anything. We know that Mabel wins this. So if Mabel's winning this, they don't want Shawn doing a job to Mabel.
Right.
And they don't want Mabel wrestling 3 times.
Yeah.
So that's why you're doing the draw.
Right.
So here's my solution to this. I thought of this today. You don't need Diesel wrestling in the main event. He's coming off elbow surgery. You don't need him wrestling. You could save him for the next In Your House. You don't need Shawn in this tournament if he's not going to win. What's the point? Put Shawn with Bam Bam against Sid and Tatanka. Shawn's got issue with Sid anyway, so you could work that out. Diesel could be in the corner. He doesn't have to work. Now, what you do is you take the Undertaker, let him wrestle Kama, because they're in a feud anyway. Let them go to a double DQ, double count out. Who cares? Neither one of them are winning anyway, but at least it makes more sense and it aligns with the feud.
And you could pick anybody to face Mabel and lose in the first
round.
round.
Throw Aldo Montoya. What do I give a shit? Throw one of the head shrinkers. Who cares? You got how many people on the roster that weren't on this card?
Right. Yeah, Aldo would have made a lot of sense. Just he's a baby face. He's,
And you're not wasting Shawn, because I'm sorry, Shawn looked freaking. That super kick, because he hits Kama with a super kick after the match,
right?
And then he does like this. He does like this shrug, like he looks at the crowd. And he does this, like, the shrug. I'm sorry, Shawn's annoyed. He was pissed about this night.
Yeah,
I am thoroughly.
I like your alternate booking there. That would have made a lot more sense, and you get the same star power. And if you're not having the I get wanting the world champion booked, but it's a tag match. It's not a title match.
Right.
So that's significantly different. And you can still have him, like you said, he's in the corner, so he's going to be on. He can even hit Tatanka with a jackknife after the match. Come in and make a save or whatever. A few other members of the $1 Million Corporation run out after the match or whatever. So you can have him do a little bit of physicality without doing any potential damage to his already hurt shoulder or elbow, whatever it was. So, yeah, I like your scenario, the Undertaker Kama match. Yeah.
And you can still give Mabel a bye. You don't have to wrestle Mabel 3 times, because I know they didn't want him working 3 times. So he gets the bye. You keep the Undertaker Kama feud going. They end up doing I think a casket. I don't know if it was a casket match at SummerSlam, but they do something at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I mean, you can go the count out route, the time limit route, or you could do a double count out, one of those things where he's grabs the chain and runs away, and Undertaker chases him because he's so focused on the chain. It
Right.
had once upon a time been the urn, and they both get counted out.
There
Yep,
you go.
yep,
Done.
yep.
So
Problem solved. They need to hire us in 30
there you
years
go.
ago.
Let's go redo the pay-per-view. Let's go redo it. Problem is half these people are dead, so you know.
Well, they always see those things like if you could travel back in time, what era would you go to? I'm like, I'd go to 1995 and take
Well, you
over
know me by now,
booking.
John. I'm obsessed with rebooking 94 and 95 is like my thing. So, you know,
That's right.
let's see who's still alive. Well, let's see. Yokozuna's gone. Who else is 6 feet in the ground on this pay-per-view? Yeah, Mabel's gone, obviously. Oh, looks, yeah, you know what? Yeah, a lot of people are still around. Yeah, yeah. Sid's gone. Actually, half the main event's gone. Bam Bam's gone.
Bam
Sid's
Bam's
gone.
gone. Yeah.
We still got Tatanka and Diesel. Yeah, so can't resurrect anybody. All right. Speaking of resurrection, we let's see here. Okay, this is I did note this. They showed I showed a video on Mabel and Undertaker qualifying in their respective matches. They show Bob Backlund campaigning to be the president of the United States. He says he wants to put a carrot in the middle of a Philly cheesesteak so he get beta carotene. It was interesting. It was, yeah, you got to go back and watch it. Then they're showing the they're showing the Spanish announce team and then the French announce team. And I noted this on Ray Rougeau. Ray Rougeau was speaking French, and I'm like, didn't he speak English when he was the Rougeaus?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he could have done a little dual thing there.
All right. A little bit.
Yeah. Stephanie Wine interviews Mabel, who says he's going straight to the top and will be king, pretty Stephanie. So we see a little bit of the early givings of Big Daddy V that we find much later on in that very forgettable run. And then it is Mabel with Mo against The Undertaker. So we actually saw Mabel beat Adam Bomb at the last In Your House. That was a qualifier. And Undertaker beat Jeff Jarrett himself. This goes a little under 11 minutes. So interference once again. After a ref bump, Taker has Mabel pinned after a choke slam. Kama comes in. He kicks Taker in the head. Mabel recovers. He drops a leg on the Undertaker. Mo revives the referee, and he counts to 3. Wade Keller's rating 1.5. Quote, given the two men's style and size, this was on the better end of what you'd expect.
Fair enough.
My note is Taker did his best to create movement, but Mabel moves like molasses.
Yeah, and my note was actually the analysis before the match. I thought they did a pretty good job of setting up the whole idea of can Undertaker, pick up and slam, pick up and tombstone Mabel. And I think Doc said, well, we know Mabel can do a side slam on Undertaker, but I don't think Undertaker can do, a tombstone. We saw he could barely do a choke slam.
Yeah.
So
that was weak.
There was some decent analysis of actual wrestling analysis.
It's funny between the two pay-per-views, between In Your House and between this one, Doc was a lot better than I remembered. Like he actually, listen, the guy was a tag team wrestler for years, but I thought, as Michael Hayes. So I thought he actually offered more insight. I enjoyed him better than Jerry Lawler.
Yeah. Lawler was better later with working with Ross, but and even then, probably overrated, but
a little bit.
It worked. He had, obviously a lot of personality, and that's important for the color, position. So I just appreciated this a little bit more when he's actually analyzing. And then Vince would just kind of throw out, it's The Undertaker, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Okay. That kind of ruins the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah, yeah. Vince was more cliche-ish a lot, with Doc trying to offer more of the analysis.
And I do know, like to your point, there's a ref bump, there's interference, but you didn't see Undertaker getting pinned very much.
That
So
and that was
that's
and that's the
interesting.
thing, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's in my notes to discuss it. I mean, the booking of Mabel, to me, there was a lot of opportunity costs in booking Mabel to win this because let's be honest, you needed to give him a meatball, to win this tournament. And Savio Vega, I mean, it ended up working out. Razor getting hurt actually ended up working out, because I had asked Wade. I said, not for nothing. I said, Wade, I said, do you remember? And I told him, I said, I know it's been 30 years, but do you remember if Mabel was a last minute decision? Because I'm thinking that if Savio's not in this tournament and Razor is they're going to have Mabel beat Razor. Like that didn't add up to me. So that's why I wonder if it was a last minute decision. He says, look, I honestly don't remember, but he doesn't remember it being last minute.
Yeah. And obviously they're going to go for Mabel Diesel. So maybe you do have, if that's your ultimate goal, is to make him a top heel threat to Diesel, then yeah, going over Razor would have made some sense.
Because that's
Um,
beating Undertaker and Razor on the same night.
right. Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do when you want to push somebody to the top.
Right. It's just misdirected. But
That's spending a lot of capital on
it's spending a
Mabel.
lot of capital, but you want to spend that kind of capital to make a new star. So it's like you don't want to blame him for that. It's not
Yeah,
so much the idea, it's the specifics of who you're doing it with
yeah.
that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And as I would argue, you know, you can use the King of the Ring to make a new star. Some years they did, some years they didn't. Bret was already big. But Owen, that was
Right.
a big thing for Owen to win. And in hindsight, that was a big thing for Austin to win. Triple H. You had some of these guys that would use it not to the world title level, but to like the intercontinental title level,
Yeah.
which meant a lot more in 95, 96, 97 than it does,
Yeah.
eventually, unfortunately. But, could you have used this as an opportunity to, Razor was already kind of at that level. So King Razor wouldn't have made a lot of sense. Once Razor's out, pushing a guy like Vega, if you want to get somebody over big out of the gate, obviously they were high enough on him to give him this spot as Razor's and to have him win 3 matches,
Yeah.
wrestle 4 times. Um, you're not going to do much with King Mabel beyond SummerSlam, and at least nothing meaningful that I recall. So you have to know his limitations. It just, doesn't make a lot of sense to me why you're not looking to build a star that isn't just big. But that
I,
was
I, I think a lot of people's issue, and we're jumping ahead because we're talking about Mabel, I mean, we know Mabel wins this,
sure.
is that Mabel just doesn't turn out to be any good.
Yeah.
That's
But
the
you
problem.
knew that already.
Yeah. And
I
it's
mean, how
like,
what do we think is going to happen different?
right. And it's like you're spending a lot of capital on somebody that you already know. I mean, they weren't that good as men on a mission. So now you're spending, a former world champion, and potentially if Razor was going to be in this tournament, two of your top guys, on somebody that you all like, to your point, that you already knew. But the thing is, it's like the King of the Ring at this point is a gimmick. It's not, I mean, unlike this year's King of the Ring, Cody and Randy are going to fight for the right to challenge for a world title on their brand.
Right.
That's not what this was. I mean, this wasn't the winner gets a title shot at SummerSlam. It just worked out that they gave it
Sure.
a table.
Right.
So I mean, if you were going to do that, I mean, to me, the answer is Shawn Michaels in a rematch against Diesel, Sid. I mean, they're much better. A heel Razor Ramon, or even Razor wins before he gets hurt. Razor wins this, turns heel, and he challenges Diesel.
Right.
Or Razor wins, and this is, again, I'm jumping ahead, but this is the scenario that Wade talked about. He thought about Shawn facing Razor in the finals, which would have been interesting.
And good.
Right? And it would have been Razor's second year in a row in the finals. Does he win? Does he turn heel? Because you had so many baby faces at this point. You didn't need Razor on the babyface side. You're pushing Savio.
Right.
You've got Shawn. You've got Diesel. You still got Bam Bam for a while.
Yeah.
You got Bret. You got all these baby faces. What's Razor doing?
Right.
And Razor just runs into the Intercontinental title later in the year because Shawn goes on the shelf briefly.
Right. Yeah, that would have been interesting. And I still say, to your original point, it wasn't like they had to face the champion at SummerSlam. So you could have done a Vega or a Razor without having it have to do with that title match. And then you build to the challenger, whoever that could be, whether it's Razor or whether it's, Sid, whoever it is outside of the tournament. So they had a lot of options.
They had a lot of options, but
going to this format where if the king and queen of the rings face the champion, it does box you in. It's like the Royal Rumble, right?
Yes.
Which, I mean, for all the issues that some people had with Jey Uso winning, at least it was like unpredictable. And the Royal Rumble got a little less predictable with the two championships. I know there's issues with the two titles, but when there was one title, it was like we talked about, well, that X, Y, and Z aren't going to be facing that champion for the WrestleMania. Shawn Michaels is going to be facing it. So Shawn Michaels is going to be winning the Rumble. When you have two titles, it's a little bit more up in the air where you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure they're going with Cody.
Yeah.
Cody's going to face Roman, but Cody doesn't have to win the Royal Rumble. Now he did, but I mean, Cody doesn't have to win the Royal Rumble because he can get to that title match. The winner of the Rumble can face. So you had freedom back then in 95 without that stipulation.
Yeah.
And I think the first time they did that stipulation specifically was Brock Lesnar. When he won, he went on to face The Rock at SummerSlam and became the world champion. And it was like a Paul Heyman had negotiated, if I remember correctly. And that's the first time I remember.
I think you're right. Yeah.
That stipulation specific, but it hasn't been consistent. It wasn't like everyone after that. It was just some years not. But you paint yourself into a little bit of a corner. I could see King Jey Uso, but I couldn't see Jey Uso Gunter again at SummerSlam. So Cody winning this past Raw, the semifinal, was incredibly predictable because of the stipulation.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably would have leaned that way anyways, but with the stipulation, it was 100%.
Right. So. And his winning is got to be because Randy ain't going to face John Cena again.
No. Right? Yeah, that's going to make the finals. I'm calling it Night of Not Many Champions.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing with my phone because we're going to be away and I'm not going to be watching the show live. So, but the Saudi shows, that's one of those shows. And if I miss a Saudi show, I'm fine. Whatever. I'll just forget about it and watch it if it sounds good. So,
I boycott the show. I have not watched the Saudi show. So,
you're not missing much.
I'm not. Allison keeps reminding me. I think she's taking a sadistic pleasure in reminding me that the Royal Rumble is going to be from Saudi next year. And she knows that that's my favorite event of the year. So she keeps every once in a while like, what are you going to do?
So pissed about that.
Yeah, we'll that's a topic for another day. But yeah, this the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments, with the stipulation, I think the women's is probably a little less predictable, but the men's is pretty straight down the line predictable this year.
Okay, I was muted and now I'm not. You do hear me, right?
I can hear you now.
Perfect. Okay. All right, let's move along here. We digressed a little bit, but good discussion. There was a post-match. Kama tries to get into it with the Undertaker, but Undertaker recovers and he chases Kama to the back, so that feud continues. They show the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Ernie the Cat Ladd, Fabulous Moolah, Ivan Putski, Pedro Morales, Grand Wizard, Antonino Rocca, and George the Animal Steel, all inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame. Pedro Morales was the WWF champion when I was born, but I didn't know it because I was just born. What do I know? Todd Pettengill interviews the Roadie and Jeff Jarrett, and that's where he calls himself the Road Dogg. And my note is, well, now. Hey, now.
Yeah.
And then we get to the King of the Ring semifinal. Savio Vega with Razor Ramon against the Roadie. This goes a little over 6.5 minutes. Vega wins it. So again, more interference. Jeff Jarrett goes up on the ropes to interfere. Vega whips Roadie into him, but Roadie stops. They think they're smart. But then Vega knees Roadie into Jarrett and rolls him up for the win. Wade had this at 1 star, quote, okay while it lasted. My note on this is it wasn't an awful match, but neither guy is really established as a premium act, and this is your semifinal match to determine who goes to the finals in the King of the Ring tournament. No wonder this pay-per-view got awful reviews, and that's really I really think that's important because, I mean, listen, Savio's is a nice act, but he's coming along, and the Roadie, I mean, he's getting a push, but he's not, again, the booking of Mabel to win this tournament cost a lot of capital because now you got to have these nondescript matches.
Right.
All right. Because what are you going to do? You're going to put Savio Vega against, if Owen Hart was healthy, was it going to be Owen Hart? No.
Right. Right. And he was Roadie's a sidekick, and Savio was a sidekick, to Razor to a certain extent. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. And obviously, it was an injury situation, but my note was literally nothing. I wrote nothing down on this match. It was
now there's not a lot, and you could tell like the crowd, like Vega, I always judge a baby face by the comeback. And Vega was making a comeback at one point and he was getting nothing from the crowd.
Yeah. Well, he was new. He wasn't established. And it was just kind of dull.
Yeah.
And lead everything.
And I mean, I don't want to give WWE too much, or WWF at the time, too much credit. Oh, they're trying something new. Well, no, because Razor got hurt. So, you're giving somebody else the spot, but you have to give Savio the spot because Mabel needs Savio in the final. Again, who's Mabel going to beat?
Right.
It's not going to beat somebody really good.
Right. And if you have everything kind of laid out in a certain way and then there's an injury, well, you're not going to change necessarily everything around that. You're just going to kind of substitute probably. Yeah. So it's easy to imagine, Razor against Roadie because they had that, this long feud with Jarrett, and the Roadie kept getting injected into it, the Rumble, etc. So that would have made a lot of sense.
And a lot of your star power is in that tag match in the main event. You don't need Diesel in the tournament, but Sid. I mean, if Sid, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Tatanka are in the tournament in 1995, okay, these are your top acts. And I mean, we talk about this a lot with AEW when like AR Fox and Commander and all these other jokes are in these tournaments. I mean, they're there to take losses. So It's like it doesn't make the tournament feel, or whatever they're doing, prestigious.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
um, all right. Not a lot to talk about with the match. Carlos Cabrera interviews Savio Vega in Spanish. Doc Hendricks is actually funny in this. He says he's lucky to be here. Doesn't know how he'll beat Mabel, and he's going to go back to stealing hubcaps after this. I mean, it's a little racist, you know.
Yeah, but for WWF, it's light side of their racism.
Yeah. And Razor, I mean, Razor's is sitting there like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? Come on.
Will you stop?
Yeah. Bret is I'm assuming this was a pre-tape promo, talks about his long-term feud with Jerry Lawler. He has to be ready for whatever Jerry has up his sleeve. He feels he let his family down and his fans when he lost to Jerry Lawler at the last pay-per-view and needed to accept whatever terms were necessary to get this match. And that's what led to the kiss my foot stipulation. Was it me, or was that camera going back and forth, really annoying?
I didn't pay attention. I was probably looking down and listening more than, but I'll take
my word for it. I don't know if Kevin Dunn was working for the company at this point.
Not that I know of, but I
don't think so. But the camera was like zooming in, it was zooming out, and it was like on an angle, and it was just like trying to create this illusion of this. I don't know what they were doing, to be honest with you, but it was bad. It was really bad.
I was disappointed Lawler didn't have his mother there with him like he had the last show.
Yeah, what's up with that? For those that don't remember, Lawler brought a very attractive woman to the ring in his the last pay-per-view and called it
which was on Mother's Day, the last one. So
yes. And then we get the ever-loved Kiss My Foot match between Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler. I mentioned earlier about Stephanie Wyand talking to Jerry on the way to the ring, and she says the foot stench is overpowering. We heard that a million times, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, but I have to mention it because I'm covering this pay-per-view. Okay. So we know the Bret Lawler feud goes back a couple of years. It actually goes back to King of the Ring 93. And through many iterations. At the last pay-per-view, Bret had defeated Hakushi, but then lost to Jerry Lawler later in the show with the help of Hakushi and Shinja. So this goes about 9.5 minutes. Bret wins it. He submits Jerry with the sharpshooter after Shinja and Hakushi failed with their interference. They had come out, but Bret had gotten the better of it. Actually, you take the analysis. Oh, let me just give you Wade's rating before you do that. 2.25. This was what you'd expect: high energy, full of comedy spots, but low on athleticism.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I noted the analysis pre-match was over the top with not the foot part. Well, I guess it's tight end, but like they literally said, if Bret loses to Lawler, that'll be the end of his career because he just will have to basically quit out of shame. And I was like, sure.
You're right.
Sure. Yeah. So it was a little bit over dramatic on the announcer's parts. As I had mentioned earlier, Dockett particularly was just giddy with anticipation over somebody getting their feet kissed. And then, the match, I mean, it's Bret. Bret is going to have a good match. And Lawler, for being Lawler, he's not in his physical prime at this point, but he's not terrible. Right. And he knows how to work. He knows how to do all the little things, right? He knows how to do all the shortcuts. He knows how to get under the fans' skins. I guess I was a little surprised by like 3 straight pile drivers that Bret kicks out of. I mean, he no-sold, if I remember correctly, he no-sold a pile driver in their match at In Your House.
Oh, yeah.
This time he didn't no-sell it, but then he took 2 more and then still kicked out. So that was a little surprising. But yeah, it was a solid match. It was get that interference out of the way. Although I think, as we've discussed, they never really seemed to fully capitalize on this Hakushi Bret feud, at least not on TV. I think they faced a lot on house shows, but
they did one match on Raw.
one match on Raw. So,
But most of the stuff was on the houses.
yeah, which of course was important too, but they especially back then, much more important. But just
Well, they
you
were
get that little
transitioning. It's funny.
interference.
They were transitioning. They were transitioning because now they're doing the monthly pay-per-views, and the house show business started to dip.
Right.
And Wade actually reported, just going through the newsletters as I was doing, that they were trying to do different things at the house shows to distinguish them. Because now, if the monthly pay-per-view is the payoff to what you're seeing on TV, well, why would I go to a house show?
Right.
They were doing like things like interactive things, getting the fans involved, making like someone a special ring announcer. They were trying to do different stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's things like, I don't think we see a settlement between Shawn and Sid based on the whole "you don't give me the night off" angle.
Right.
They were supposed to do it at SummerSlam, but then Sid gets hurt. Bret and Hakushi. I mean, Bret, I think he wins the match on Raw, but it's well after In Your House. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was what it was, but it was a long feud, this Lawler Bret 2-year culmination. And, the heel gets his comeuppance in the end, and that's what you want. And
The only positive that I'll take from this feud is that it brought out more of the personal side of Bret. I mean, you got a lot of that in the Bret Owen feud, but you really, like, Bret never had any like personal issues to this point. Obviously, someone comes a year later and he has a real personal issue with someone else on this show. We know who that is.
Yeah.
But like, to this point, even when he was champ, outside of Owen, like, he didn't have a personal issue with Yokozuna.
Mhm.
Bret and Perfect, they just wrestled a great match at SummerSlam, but there wasn't a personal deal. So Lawler actually brought out the personality of Bret. And it was always there with Bret. Not like it wasn't there.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Post-match, Hakushi and Shinja try to interfere again, but then Hakushi runs into Lawler. Bret sticks his foot in Lawler's mouth and then sticks Lawler's own foot in his mouth. So all of that, Lawler's got to smell his own stinky feet. All right. Last two matches, and then we'll wrap this up. King of the Ring final. We've been talking about this. Savio Vega against Mabel. So we know who Vega has beaten on the way. We know who Mabel has beaten. And Vince McMahon trying to pass this off as Rocky Balboa. I mean, I get it because they're in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there, and I mean, as a fellow Italian, John, nothing against Savio Vega, but he's not Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I get what they were doing.
Yeah.
He beat
Underdog.
IRS, he beat Yokozuna. He beat the Roadie. It's this underdog story.
Sure.
But, people aren't really with him. I mean, I guess people were really with Rocky until he started the match with Apollo Creed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to think of the Rocky story, and like, Rocky was this bum club fighter that nobody knew.
Right.
So, Savio, I mean, unless you were smart enough to know he was the very dangerous Quang, I mean, you really didn't know Savio, but it's not the same story.
No, I think, what are the chances Vince ever watched Rocky?
What's this Rocky Balboa stuff?
I mean, somebody gives him the gist of it. Oh, it's an underdog. Oh, perfect. Savio's the underdog.
Exactly.
That's really the long and short of it. And that's, it's fine. I mean, I haven't seen the first Rocky in quite a while, but I'm always more of a Rocky 3 fan myself,
Yeah,
but,
that's the watch. Yeah, that's the one. That's the more watchable.
I mean, I like them all through,
Yeah.
but I'm not a big fan of 4, but the first 3 and 5, but but yeah, it's funny because the first one is like a great movie, but the second and third are just kind of fun. If that makes sense. They're maybe not as good a movie or a greatest film, but they're a lot of fun, especially when you get to Mr. T. So
yeah. I mean, so I guess, like I said, I guess there are some similarities, but it's a completely different animal. This goes about 8.5 minutes. So Mabel wins this to become king of the ring. He catches Savio coming off the ropes into a slam, which is the same move he beat Adam Bomb. Somehow Savio kicks out of that, and then he hits him with a splash for the pin. Wade's rating 3/4, quote, Mo's segment was long and tedious, and my God, was it ever. He does a bear hug that slows things down, and a little bit later on, I think he had him in like a chin lock at some point. I thought I noted that, but the the big part of this match, and I was looking for it, was the EC dub chant.
Yeah, it was how do I want to put this? When there's certain chants that wrestling fans do that annoy me, and I'm sure you. Go VIP, read Greg Parks's recent article on, I think it was in the Torch newsletter, about the "We Want Tables" chant.
Oh yeah,
having supplanted what is the new most annoying chant, and I couldn't agree more with Greg, my old buddy. So, but sometimes they bring it on themselves.
yeah.
You're not gonna get necessarily an ECW chant if you're putting on a good show. And so,
which is again booking Mabel to win this tournament. You spent a lot of it's a big opportunity cost.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to give him Savio Vega, but this is the result.
Right. And yeah, I mean,
and on your roster, to add to this, on your roster, Tatanka, Sid, Bret Hart, Owen Hart. Now Bulldog had some legal issues, so he wasn't able to be in the tournament. Razor, okay, gets hurt. I'll forgive that. You got Jeff Jarrett. You got The Undertaker. You got Lex Luger. You got Yokozuna. I mean, you got Kid. I mean, Kid was hurt, so forget it. But you got plenty of talent. And you didn't have to do a tag team match as the main event. You could have done that on Raw, or you could have saved that for the next In Your House.
Yeah.
And, well, when you got matches like the Roadie against, Bob Holly and Savio Vega against the Roadie and all of that stuff, that's why people look back at this pay-per-view and say it sucked. And I can't blame them.
Yeah. And again, if you want to try to get Bob Holly over, you would think he would have more of an upside than Roadie at this point. But Roadie wins. Yeah. It's like all of these kind of things where, not that Bob Holly, you want to see him wrestle a bunch of times, but it would have made, I think, maybe a little more sense. So, it really wasn't a question of talent. It was always a question of how is that talent being used and being pushed. And the choice of Mabel, we're going to get behind Mabel because he's big. But it's like, but you already had Sid, who was big, and you had Diesel, who was big, and you had Bam Bam, who was big, and you had Yoko, who was big. You don't need another just big guy to suddenly be like, this is our new big guy to push, because you already had all those other guys.
So let's go there. Let's run some alternate choices. What about Yokozuna as king? What about Wade's idea of Yokozuna as king of the ring?
Yeah, no, I think we're past that at this point.
And I think the problem with it too is now Yoko's got to wrestle. I mean, he's only going to wrestle twice because you're going to give him a bye. You're going to do whatever,
right?
If you put him in Mabel's place,
sure.
But, I mean, he is. I mean, if you look at the match with Savio and you look at the match with Mabel, the match with Savio is better.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you what I would have liked to have seen. I'll tell you what I would have liked to have seen. If you want to do the underdog story and you want the big guy to be, king of the ring, if he wasn't hurt, let the finals be the 1-2-3 Kid against Yokozuna. But listen, Kid was very likable. He was
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And I mean, certainly I'm going to take Yoko over Mabel. I can see why they would take Mabel over Yoko in that Yoko's already established. He's already where he's at.
Yeah.
He's not going to gain anything from it. Whereas the hope is that Mabel gains something from it.
And that was the idea.
Right. That's the idea. But again, that's Vince McMahon not always, but often picking the wrong horse to get behind.
Yeah.
Whether it was Luger in 92 or 93 or, Mabel here, whatever it is, it's that size, or in Luger's case, musculature that he wanted to push above all else. But for all of Sid's faults, Sid was way better than Mabel in every way. And it's like
the problem is, this is why Mabel was King of the Ring, in my opinion. Number one, it's a gimmick. We've mentioned that. But number two, the idea of putting on that crown and putting on the robe. Do you want to do that to Sid? Probably not.
That's a fair point.
You want to do that to Shawn Michaels? Probably not. I mean, you could probably get away with it with Yoko. You probably could. But to your point, he was already established. So they want to. So let's. You're not. I mean, Tatanka, King Tatanka. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you could do that. But Mabel, I mean, just look at, and this is what I was talking to Wade about, the proclamation that Mo cuts. I actually was impressed with Mo. I thought he was kind of, I thought he sounded natural. He didn't sound rehearsed. Hear ye, what does he say? You'll bow before his grace. Long live King Mabel, and he is the best that the World Wrestling Federation has to offer. I mean, he sounded like an actual person. So, but these are the things that Vince, you got to think about what Vince wants to see at the end. Again, not putting the crown on Sid, not putting the crown on Shawn, not putting the crown on even Razor, Yeah,
and I think the idea of the people coming out carrying Mabel on the throne, that visual obviously appealed to McMahon in a big way. So my note here was, did you notice that he got hit right in the forehead by a piece of garbage that somebody threw?
No, I didn't. No, I missed it.
As he's reading the proclamation, as Mo is reading the proclamation, Mabel in the throne, right in the forehead. And I said, wow, that was really good.
Ooh, I have to go back and watch that. I'll have to check that out.
A wadded up piece of paper, just right in the forehead.
Yeah.
And he kind of.
Yeah. The other thing we should mention too, like by Mabel winning King of the Ring, it's something that he doesn't have to win the title.
Right.
Because he's already got his, at this point in time, in 1995, if you got the King of the Ring, that's kind of like your world championship. I mean, let's think about it. 93, Bret was not getting a title match at SummerSlam. So that was just a rehabilitation. And as we know, Luger was originally supposed to win the world title in 94. Owen was not winning, but he was the King of Hearts. And we got to think about what Vince wanted to see then.
And the parallel story with his brother was just perfect.
And exactly. And he replicated what his brother did the year earlier. So that was that. Here, the the same thing. Mabel, the visual, him wearing the crown, him wearing the robe, hear ye, I'm King Mabel. It made a lot of sense. It just fit, because that's what King of the Ring was at this point. It was not about crowning the best wrestler, because I could think of about 5 guys that could have won that would have been better. Like pro wrestling then and now. That's why the show is what it's called. If this is, if this was booked in 2025, right? Shawn Michaels might be winning. Sid might be winning. Tatanka. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many choices on this. Undertaker. I mean, there's King Jarrett. I mean, there's so many choices, that would have been made if the idea was the winner will get, or the winner gets a title match of his choosing. Doesn't even have to be the world title.
Well, and even if it's not for the title, I mean, I could see them going Another name just to throw out at the time, if they want to push and get behind a guy, would have been Bigelow. Yeah, I mean, I know he's in this tag main event, but as we said, that doesn't have to happen. Because as a baby face, I think he could have had some fun with the King gimmick.
King Bigelow, yeah.
Yeah, he could have definitely had some fun with that. And
you're not boxed in because, again, the winner, it was not known that the winner was getting a title match at SummerSlam.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. Let's move forward here. Any other? I think we've just about covered everything we were going to say. I think we discussed the Razor Shawn scenario. That was the scenario that Wade had run. And let me just make sure I didn't forget something. He actually figured that Mabel would win via DQ and Shawn would beat Kama. And this is before, this is when he had his original brackets, and that Razor would go to the finals, and so you'd have Razor versus Shawn. I mean, if Razor doesn't get hurt, considering he lost in the finals the year before, I could see a scenario where he does win. And then there's impetus to challenge Michaels at SummerSlam, because they really just threw that match together. It was supposed to be Shawn and Sid, and then Sid got hurt, and Gorilla Monsoon announced that, was it Gorilla? No, I think it was Jack Tunney. It was Tunney.
I think it was still Tunney at this point.
Now it's going to be Shawn and Razor, and it was like, wait a minute, why Shawn and Razor? Like they're both, what I mean? Like they're both baby. So, yeah.
Well, could you have done? If you go Shawn Razor in the finals here, could you have had Shawn win? Razor now loses 2 finals in a row. That could have been an impetus for a heel turn on his part.
I agree.
He could have turned heel in the match to win, or he could turn heel after the match and losing. I guess, either way, you could work it out and set up a future match for a title at that point.
And then there's actual impetus for a Shawn Razor match at SummerSlam. There's actual, you know what I mean? Like, Shawn wins King of the Ring, Razor turns after that, and then because now it's 1-1. You had WrestleMania 10, now you have this, so you have part 3.
Well, right, and you've done babyface heel, babyface, and now heel babyface
with the roles. The roles switched,
right?
Yeah.
So you've
you didn't need, and like we talked about, you didn't need Razor as a babyface anymore. It was a crowded field, and you had no heels.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's take this home. There's not a lot to talk about with the main event. It's a tag match: Diesel and Bam Bam Bigelow against Sid and Tatanka. This was set up at In Your House. When Diesel beat Sid via disqualification to retain the title, Tatanka got involved. And then Diesel's new buddy, Bam Bam Bigelow, who had gotten fired from the $1 Million Corporation, helps him. They set up the title match. This goes a very long 17 and a half minutes. And Diesel and Bam Bam win it. So this finish is something. Diesel hits this really bad jackknife on Tatanka, okay? This is why he did not need to be in this match, all right? It's very close to the ropes, so I thought that Tatanka was going to put his foot on the rope, but no, he pulls him up, and he wants Sid to come into the ring. Sid just gets up at this piece, he gets out, he's gone. It's like, screw this. And then Diesel just hits Tatanka with an elbow for the pin, and I'm just... Wade has this at a 1 3/4, and he didn't really comment. And at first, I read Wade's report. I'm like, why didn't he make any? Because he usually puts a little quib in there, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably why.
What more is there to say?
There really isn't.
I mean, I had that Bam Bam is the only one in the match creating movement.
Yeah,
I mean, he's creating tons of movement, doing a lot of work. And then there was also his first hot tag to Diesel was weird, where like Tatanka came in to try to like stop him, but he still I thought for sure they're doing the bit where he gets the tag, but the referee doesn't see it
I thought
because
so too. I
Tatanka had
noted
come
that.
in, but he
Yeah.
did see it, and then Tatanka just, so I don't know. And then Diesel hits maybe 3 moves and then hurts his elbow again and tags back out to
Yep.
Bam Bam. And Doc even comments, "Oh, that was too soon. He didn't give, Bam Bam enough time to recover or something." That whole sequence was very weird.
Yeah.
It made me wonder if something had gotten messed up there where he wasn't supposed to actually be the legal man. Because if Diesel comes in not the legal man, he could have hit the same 3 moves and then been kicked out by the referee saying, "You got a tag," and he'd get mad. That
Yeah.
very stereotypical tag spot. So I don't know. It was that whole thing was just weird. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but that was
Bad refereeing all night, actually, be honest with you.
yeah, yeah, the whole thing. And give Bam Bam credit. We talked last time about how underrated he was, underutilized, because he was the only thing making this match from being a total snooze. And if Diesel's got an arm injury and he's trying to work through it, that explains some of it. But Tatanka's never known for his high energy work
No.
rate. I do think it's interesting. He's still doing like a lot of the war dance stuff that was a babyface kind of thing when he was the babyface Tatanka. I'm kind of surprised in hindsight that he didn't do more to change his act once he was the sellout to the $1 million corporation.
He was the same in-ring performer. Nothing changed. All he did was he was wearing dark clothes.
Yeah.
And coming out to DiBiase's music.
Right. And so that was obviously a missed opportunity, but yeah, just not a lot to talk about. I mean, I laughed at the ending because, as I said, I didn't see this pay-per-view, and I didn't, I don't think I ever saw this match. So I didn't know what was going to happen when Sid just left.
Well, it's funny now. It makes sense that the next pay-per-view, In Your House 2, the Lumberjacks, I guess, with Sid walking out, it kind of makes sense now that they had a lumberjack match, because I was wondering how that came together.
That does. I mean, back then they actually had reasons for gimmicks, unlike now.
Right.
They just stick a person in a steel cage match or a lumberjack match with no storyline purpose behind it. So give them credit, at least that made sense at the time.
Which, by the way, this is completely off topic. The most egregious insertion of a challenger for a title match in a steel cage was Ryback in 2012 against CM Punk when John Cena got hurt. Punk was supposed to face Cena in a steel cage at like Hell in a Cell. Oh, Hell in a Cell, actually. I'm sorry, Hell in a Cell. The calendar event. And Cena was hurt. And at the end of the show, you see Punk sees his replacement opponent. It's Ryback. And I'm like, there is absolutely no heat between these two. And they're going to work a Hell in a Cell. What? So...
Yeah.
And now a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough we don't want to be hypercritical when there's injuries, especially late in the game and certain things, right, like with Razor's injury. But at the same time, yeah, that's always part of the problem with these, like you said, the calendar
events. Yeah.
The calendar event. It's just,
yeah, and again, I think the scenario I ran, and you agreed earlier. I mean, I think you totally you do a lot better with Shawn in this match, and Shawn and Bam Bam, with Diesel in the corner instead of working the match against Sid and Tatanka, and you could still do the same thing. I mean, you could do Shawn super kicks. Tatanka, and he can call for Sid, and Sid could still. You could still do the same ending, and you don't do the same dumb ending.
You could do that, and then have Bam Bam come in and do the diving headbutt to finish the match, and the elbow drop.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, we discussed that scenario earlier. One thing about Bam Bam, his promo, he's a very underrated promo. Like when he was talking before the match, I felt like I was listening to a real person.
Yeah.
The one thing I did note, though, we had Steiner math, and now we got Bam Bam math, because he talks about with me at 110% and him at 110%, we definitely got more than 220%. And I'm like, what? Love it. So the Steiner math and this Bam Bam math.
Good stuff. And I had noted last month that how awkward I thought Diesel came across on the mic. I thought he was better here too.
Yes. Sounded more Kevin Nash.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he let's see here. Diesel called Tatanka Pocahontas. I almost died. But he comes across really well. He's not doing the fake tough guy accent, he's just talking about the match, and that's the Diesel that I liked, and Bam Bam, he's like, I think he says, we're not going out there for a waltz and a dance. This is going to be a street fight, and I'm coming with, and that's where I'm, the 110% or whatever, but he sounds like a natural person, he sounds like an actual person. So I think, he's, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but Bam Bam, a very underutilized talent in the WWF in those days. A lot more. You could have spent a lot more capital on him. All right.
You know what I think is interesting? So back then, as a 15-year-old, I had, we talked about my video games. Sega Genesis was my my thing at the time, and I had the in '94 there was WWF Raw, and '95 was WrestleMania the arcade game, were the two big ones that I had. And going through these things, these shows from this year. So here's the lineup for the Raw game that came out in '94. 1, 2, 3 Kid. Game. Yeah, it was a great game. 1, 2, 3 Kid, Bam Bam Bigelow, Bret Hart, Diesel, Doink, Luger, Luna Vachon.
Oh God.
Owen Hart, Razor, Michaels, Taker, and Yokozuna. And I don't have it in front of me, but off of memory, the arcade game had Yoko, Undertaker, Michaels, Razor, Luger, Doink, Bret, and Bigelow. I mean, Bigelow is featured, with those guys in those video games. So they had a both as a heel in '94 and now as a babyface in '95. They had obviously something in him that they recognized, but they didn't go as far as they could have with him. And I don't know, behind the scenes or anything. I don't know what was going on, if there was any reason, or if they just kind of said, hey, we see him at that level. He's good enough to be on the games. He's good enough to be in some big matches, but he's never going to be that next level.
I think with Bam Bam, and you can even see it now with Bronson Reed. I always compare Bronson Reed to Bam Bam. He's generally going to be somebody's heavy. He's generally going to be somebody's tough guy, or as a baby. And we haven't seen Bronson as a baby face yet, at least on the main roster. We saw him in NXT.
Yeah, certainly not since his return. Yeah.
Generally they're going to get involved with feuds, but not necessarily be the lead guy. No. They just don't. I think it's all about presentation with the WWF, and you have to. And I hate to use this as an example, but who would you stick on the poster? You're not going to put Bam Bam on the poster. But in ECW you would. He flourished in a company like ECW because they're not about looks. And, no disrespect to Scott Bigelow, who was a wonderful talent, but, he's not a guy that they're going to feature very high, and that's shallow.
Yeah, it is, but at the same time, like, Vince was also about size, and he had that size. And he was unique with the flame tattoos and everything. I mean,
he could work.
He could
work.
And he could talk. He really could. It's I think that's one of those things, every once in a while, recently, on the flip side, I'm blanking on her name. I'm blanking on her name in both companies. How can I not, Johnny Nitro's wife?
Frankie Monet.
Frankie Monet
Taya Valkyrie.
Taya Valkyrie. Like, when she was in NXT as Frankie Monet, Vince was still running the company.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm looking at her and I'm going, that's exactly who Vince McMahon wants to push as a world champion amongst the women. She's blonde, she's attractive, she's unique looking, and she can actually, wrestle pretty good. And I was amazed she never got the opportunity with Vince running it. And sometimes, every once in a while, there's those people where you're just like, oh, that's somebody Vince is going to love. And then for whatever reason, it doesn't pan out the way you might think. And maybe Bam Bam, I mean, you're right. Bam Bam doesn't have the Luger physique, but he doesn't have the Hogan physique. He doesn't have that, but he does have size. He does have a unique look. And again, I'm just kind of amazed that he never got more of a run. So,
yeah. Again, I think it's unfortunately, it's a very WWF and now WWE is a very cosmetic company.
Yeah.
It's Mean Girls is probably the best way to describe it. It's run with a Mean Girls mentality. Like, if you're not part of the plastics and you don't have the look, that's so fetch. So as they say, no, I don't have daughters that just watched Mean Girls. So anyway, different topic.
I don't have any kids, and I watch.
And in his, but in his mind, I think he feels Bam Bam got enough.
Yeah.
He was in the King of the Ring finals in '93.
I mean, he was in the main event of WrestleMania with the Lawrence Taylor gimmick,
main event against Lawrence Taylor. I mean, they, they saw him, as someone that can, be put up against a non-wrestler. I mean, he was, I think he was he on Summers? I think he was at SummerSlam 90. I can't remember. I did that with Greg too. I should remember, but yeah, I mean, I guess they always felt that they gave him enough. So yeah, but just unfortunately he didn't crack the code. He didn't have the look that they wanted. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think he could have been, I mean, you could look at any point that he was there and he could have been a world, maybe not in the Hogan days, but he could have been a world champion even for a couple of months. Certainly he had the tools and he had the mic skills.
Yeah. Or even, the IC level, or even, like I said, the King of the Ring, anything beyond what they kind of did with him where he had a definite ceiling. But yeah. Who knows?
So, there's just somebody in the chat here. Pro Wrestling Torch. Sorry to get you off topic, but do you think Bailey is very underrated on the mic? So, just I appreciate the comments. I really do, and I appreciate the chat. But this is more of a look back show. So we're not really talking about. I mean, we do talk about current events, but if they're tied to, what we're talking about in the past, and I see some other comments. Becky Hogan is overrated. Dolph Ziggler should have been bigger. So yeah, we're skipping around here, but I do appreciate the comments nonetheless. All right, anything else that we need to talk about with King of the Ring?
Are we doing our
yeah, what are we doing?
I think we gotta go thumbs down.
It is. You know what? It's it's a rewatchable thumbs down because it's not a terrible paper. It's not long. It's not terrible in that sense, but yeah, you don't really come away. There isn't a match that you want to rewatch.
No, I was trying to think because I thought in my notes I had written down best match of the night, but I didn't. And then I thought, well, which one would I have put that down next to? And it's like to the Michaels comma match. I mean,
Best match on the card.
probably the best match on the card, a match that ends without a decision. I mean, it's highly skippable. It's utterly forgettable. As I said, if I did watch it, I clearly forgot, but I'm pretty sure I did not watch it at the time, and I
Yeah.
just as well that I saved the $30 30 years ago. Even if my portion would have been like 10, split it a few ways, but
there you go.
save that $10 and you know we have access to these shows. It's fun to go back and watch, but yeah, pick another show if you're looking for some nostalgia.
Yeah,
pick something else from '95. I'm sure you'll do better than King of the Ring.
ECW.
I think I had more fun with the In Your House last month.
Honestly, I agree with you. Yeah, the In Your House, that was a lot of fun. And let's quickly preview In Your House 2, since that's the next one. Real quick, that's the In Your House 2, the Lumberjacks. So what do we got to look forward to? We got Diesel and Sid in the Lumberjack match. The Roadie against the 1-2-3 Kid. Men on a Mission against Razor and Savio. Bam Bam against Henry Godwin. Okay. Shawn Michaels against Jeff Jarrett. Owen and Yoko against the Allied Powers. Okay.
Well, and it's also, those shorter, cheaper at the time shows where they were in between the big five at that point, right? So you're not looking for it's not going to be SummerSlam, it's not going to be Mania. So we'll see.
Exactly.
I've heard worse.
Yep. All right, John. Plug your socials and what you do for the Torch, and we'll take it home.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Blue Sky at John Mezzera, and at the Torch you can read my weekly Raw Hits and Misses. It is a part of the larger Hits and Misses family at the Torch. I don't even know if it seems like every show is pretty much covered at this point. Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, I think Collision. I'm not sure if anyone's doing NXT right now, but probably. So it's always a fun, hey, here's what I like, here's what I didn't like. I've been doing it for longer than I care to think about. I used to do Raw, SmackDown, ECW, and Impact, and a weekly recap. And now I just do Raw because I just at some point said I can't handle 5, and then I can't handle 4, and then 3, and then 2. So, but I still do Raw, and you can look for that. It's usually posted sometime Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. And then I am here. It seems like every month now that they're going to these more frequent pay-per-views with you.
There you go. Yep. Riding the 1995 WWF train. You can follow me on Blue Sky. It's at Frank Peteani 73. So at Frank Peteani 73. I'm still on X at Frank Peteani and Facebook as well. I don't post a ton anymore, but I do respond if you post to me. And I say post, not troll, because I will not answer that. And right now, this is my only assignment for the Torch. Unfortunately, time is just not on my side. But I like to keep myself in the pool. I like to keep my my feet in the water and do something. And I'm glad to do this. And John, always glad to do this with you. And I look forward to going in your house for the next pay-per-view. Well, not in your house. I mean, we'll be in separate houses, but you know what I mean.
More than likely, yeah.
All right. For John Mezzera, I am Torch contributor Frank Peteani, reminding you when you are looking for nostalgia, you've come to the right place when we talk pro wrestling then and now. And also like to thank everybody that was in the chat. Appreciate your comments. We'll talk to you next time.